Good morning. Today we are going to discuss about the verbal and the non-verbal communications. A verbal communication. We may often think that having good communication skills is all about the ability to speak well or all about speaking. We are right, but only 50% right. Because verbal communication has another very important part, listening. Speaking, listening gives a good verbal communication. Broadly, listening may be classified into sympathetic listening and empathetic listening. In sympathetic listening, we care about the other person and show this concern in the way we pay close attention and express our sorrow for their ills and happiness at their joys. In other words, there is sharing of feelings. An example for a sympathetic listening. On our way back here from office, you slip and fall and hurt your back. When you reach home, your family members feel for you. They share your hurt feelings and maybe even shed a tear in sympathy. Empathetic listening. When we listen empathetically, we go beyond sympathy to seek a truer understanding of how others are feeling. This requires excellent discrimination and close attention to emotional signals. When we are being truly empathetic, we actually acknowledge what they are feeling. In order to get others to expose these deep parts of themselves to us, we also need to demonstrate our empathy in our demeanor towards them, listening sensitively and in a way that encourages self disclosure. As an example for empathetic listening, on your way back from office, you slip and fall and hurt your back. You visit your doctor. Your doctor does not share your feelings. He does not reject or truthful your feelings, but on the contrary, he acknowledges your feelings totally and treats you for your injuries. Here, there is no sharing of feelings, but acknowledgement of feelings. Speaking consists of two parts, what to speak and how to speak. What to speak? The first step is brainstorming. The next step is to choose a presentation format or a storage system. The final step is the presentation itself. Individual brainstorming is a process of you getting your ideas out on paper. The idea is to put down all of or most of your ideas on paper. This has two advantages. Number one, it encourages the unrestricted flow of thoughts. Number two, it facilitates the strategic or comparative evaluation of your ideas. That is, once on paper, you have the opportunity of ranking your ideas in terms of importance and efficiency. You may now put your ideas against one another and choose the best ones. Now that we know what we are going to speak, we need to put down all your ideas in the most presentable manner. We need a format as per which we may present these ideas. We may call it a presentation, display format, or a storage system. And what is the need for the storage systems? We asked a question. Do we forget due to nervousness? Or do we get nervous due to forgetting? As an example, what if you had to recite the alphabet in front of an audience? Will you get nervous? Obviously not. Or why do we get nervous? Nervousness does not cause as much forgetting as forgetting causes nervousness. One of the main causes of nervousness is forgetting, or rather, the fear of forgetting. In other words, we would not get nervous if we knew for certain that we would not forget our lines. So, to prevent forgetting, we need a good storage system or a good retrieval system. A good storage system or display format also make it easy for our listeners to understand our ideas easily. Let us check out a few of these filing systems. Storage number one, the introduction, body, and the conclusion format. Number one, introduce the topic or what you're going to say. In the body, add a few supporting ideas to build further. End with the appropriate conclusions. Storage system number two, what? Begin with the end or conclusion. How? How do we support the conclusion? Prove it using examples, case studies, and statistics. Conclude with I hope I have been able to. Storage system number three, the time sequence. Start with the reference or relevance to the past. Continue with the reference or relevance to the present. Project the future with a personal touch. Storage system number four, the positive, negative, and the personal touch. Introduction with the positive, like advantages and the strengths. Continue with the negatives with disadvantages and weaknesses. Give your personal opinion based on how you have evaluated the positive and the negative. Do you know how to speak? There are a few guidelines for. Number one, the speed. Number two, the clarity. Number three, the punctuation. Number four, the pronunciation. Number five, the familiarity. Number six, the fluency. Number seven is the expression. Let's see number one, the speed. The speed is a number of words per minute. While most of the Indians speak at 170 to 180 words per minute, their foreign counterparts speak at 110 to 120 words per minute. Slowing down on rate of speech is the first step towards better speech. Number two, clarity. Clarity is audible and free of distortion. The speech should be loud enough to carry to all the listeners. Voice clarity must be mastered with a regular practice. Number three, pronunciation. Always remember that English is not phonetic. That means that we do not always say a word with the same way that we spell it. Use a good dictionary or work with your trainer to correct pronunciation. Next, punctuations. Punctuation is the use of various kinds of pauses. Pause at full stops, pause at commas, pause at semicolons, pause at interjection marks, pause at question marks. Next point to be remembered is familiarity with the words used. Learning new words, using non-words in a new context, understanding context and situations before reading again. Fluency is able to express easily. Developing fluency is a matter of having all the other parameters in place. Fluency indicates that a comfortable working ability with the language has been established. The last point to remember is the expression of transforming of ideas into words. Expression of different feelings with the words, word stress, tone, pitch, and inflection. Next, we move to the nonverbal communication. What do you mean by the word as a nonverbal communication? All communication other than that involving words and language. This is fine, but could include everything from animal communication to films. For our purposes, we will use a more restricted definition. Bodily communication other than words and language. The forms of non-verbal communication. Different categories of non-verbal communication. The functions or the uses of non-verbal communications. Before we do this, we need to establish some general points about non-verbal communications and its relationship to language and culture. Now tell me, what is the relationship between the non-verbal communication, language and culture? When traveling, we do not, on the whole, make the assumption that everyone will understand our first and preferred language. Most of us accept we must either learn a new language or rely entirely on verbal signals for communications. We assume we will have no difficulty in decoding non-verbal clues. We need to be aware of the enormous range and diversity of non-verbal behavior. Even in the secure territory of our own familiar culture, care is needed in the interpretation of non-verbal clues. Jumping to conclusions about meanings of non-verbal clues can be dangerous. The categorization of the non-verbal languages, or called as a para-language. The para-language consists of the non-verbal elements that accompany speech. It includes the way we speak, volume, pitch, intonation, speed of delivery, articulation, rhythm, the sounds we make other than language, laughter, crying, yawning, sighing, screeching, coughing, filled with pauses such as ah, or as the unfilled pauses. Clothing, hairstyle, Makeup, jewelry, tattoos, piercings, glasses, facial hair, accessories such as bags. You only have to think of the huge industries associated with the above examples to recognize the cultural significance of physical appearance. Many societies had highly regulated codes of dress, often linked to rank and status. It is the body's capacity to communicate aspects of individual's identity which makes us so aware of our physical appearance. Self-expression in contemporary culture is also limited by requirements to wear uniforms or to observe dress codes, not necessarily restricted to schools and public services. Many corporations and organizations accept employees to communicate corporate rather than an individual identity. For the categories of nonverbal communication with its activities, one is body movement, closeness, touching, eye movement, smells. First, we'll discuss about the body movements. Gesture, facial expression, and posture. Emblems, gestures with specific cultural meanings attached. Illustrators reinforce words of speakers. Adapters are unconscious gestures to relieve stress or boredom. Posture is heavily laden with the value judgments. Closeness, study of how we use space and distance, includes like seating arrangements, queuing, and territoriality. The ideas of personal space, invasion of personal space, and comfort zones. Use of objects as markers to indicate ownership of space. Touching. Physical contact such as holding, stroking, shaking hands, guiding. Linked to proxemics. Touch is very important in our early development. Many rules and taboos regulating physical contact. The eye movement. Eye movement, length and direction of gaze, changes in pupil size. We are hypersensitive to information imparted by eyes. Can be argued. Eyes reveals the truthfulness of what is being said. Smell. Humans do not have particularly well developed sense of smell compared with the other species. Perfumes and deodorants send powerful messages, as can the natural body odors we try to suppress. A rapidly growing industry has developed around the use of smells. The complex messages. Rare for these nonverbal codes to operate in isolation from one another or separately from language. We create and perceive messages using signs from a range of verbal and the nonverbal codes. To make this even more complex, these signs and codes not to always pull in the same direction. The communicative competence. A competent communicator will recognize the use different verbal and non-verbal styles as they are suited to different social situations. Recognize the relationship between verbal and non-verbal elements in communication. Compensate for possible misinterpretations in communications with others. The functions of nonverbal communications: communicating feelings, emotions, and attitudes, replacing and regulating language. Now, communicating feelings, emotions, and attitudes. Nonverbal communication has a particularly important role in establishing and maintaining relationships, otherwise known as an affective function. We rely more heavily on nonverbal communication in this area of personal communications. Looks, glances, changes in orientation allow others to know what sort of relationship we want to have. We use nonverbal communication to establish a mutually acceptable level of intimacy. Replacing and regulating language. The role of nonverbal communication in inflecting the meaning of a sentence can be explored by performing the following sentence in different ways. Well, I really enjoyed the party last night. Replacing and regulating language. Paralinguistic features such as pitch, tone, and emphasis. Throw in other nonverbal cues such as eyebrow lifting or illustrators such as the use of the index and the first finger of both hands to indicate inverted commas around a word. Number of potential meanings rapidly increases. Nonverbal cues also make a significant contribution of the conversation management. Rules of turn taking allow us to have a coherent discussions without constantly taking over the top of each other. Paralanguage, gaze, eye contact, and head movement all play a part. It's a set of rules that takes some time to grasp. Women typically have a more cooperative conversational style, whereas men tend to provide less nonverbal feedback. The other functions, many others uses to which we put our nonverbal codes, including self-expression, group membership, persuasion, indicating roles. Thank you.